Oh, you gotta kind of move.
Yeah, we'll aim.
There we go.
Hey, can folks hear us? Yes.
Yay.
Woo, oh, I see a lot of yeses. Wow, this is a lively crowd. There's not enough window space for all of these people saying yes. So I'll assume that's a universal yes. And we'll go forward. So, yes, but are we talking? Is Bradley talking as well, who we just enabled? Maybe I don't have my volume turned up. Hey, Bradley, are we good to go?
I think we are.
Okay. Looks like we're good. We will start rolling and try to keep up with the. We'll try to keep up with the chat if you have questions or anything. We're going to try to go through the presentation portion pretty quickly and have some time for questions at the end. I will skip ahead. We are making sure the recording is started. Looks like it is. So switching over to our slide deck, muting my own volume. Is this better? Okay, introductions.
Who are you?
Hi, I'm Josh. I'm the program director for Maker Learning for Digital Promise.
Hi, I'm Jessica Parker. I'm the director of community at Maker Ed.
Together, we coordinate something called the Maker Promise, which is a partnership between our two organizations and now actually several other partner organizations to bring making to students all across the country and all around the world. So just a little history of this Maker Promise initiative and the session title, Librarians are Maker Champions, and you can be too. The Maker Champion phrase comes from this Maker Promise, this pledge.
Wait, we might want to do the volume.
People are, I hear some people saying it sounds fine and some people who are not hearing.
So you want to turn the volume up a little bit, or is it totally good?
No, that was just that was my speakers. So the microphone looks like it's live.
Okay, great.
Okay, I see enough people saying they can hear us, so we're going to continue.
Okay.
And I apologize if you can't hear. This is being recorded, so if there's technical issues, you should be able to come back and watch it at your convenience. So the Maker Promise was a call to action that launched a year and a half ago by Digital Promise and Maker Ed. To really, it started out to gauge the engagement of school leaders in Maker Learning, seeing the huge sort of grassroots movement around it, and trying to understand and build more institutional commitment around the idea of making. So the initial call to action was for school administrators and leaders to sign this pledge that they were going to do these three things: dedicate a space for making, designate a champion of making, and display and showcase student work.
Great. And so let's give you a little bit of history. So we launched this back in March of 2016. You'll see that by June of that year, we had over 1,400 schools, and this list continues to grow. We were representing then over 1 million students in all 50 states. And so now we're at a point where we want to make sure that more than just administrators and school leaders are signing up for the Maker Promise, that it really is about maker champions like yourselves in libraries and schools, in libraries in the local community, to then support the wonderful potential opportunity Maker Education has in K-12 settings. And so the Maker Promise is open to be signed, and it's a wonderful resource not only for you as a librarian to learn more about Maker Education, but for you to also be a networker, for someone to actually help connect the dots, because we're going to show you in a second what these Maker educators and champions are saying that they need, and I think it ties in perfectly to your role as a librarian or your role within a library, whether public or within schools.
So after that call to action and that really great response in just a short period of time, we move forward to try to now figure out how to sort of catalyze this network, build support, and move forward. So we wanted to understand more, right? Knowing that leadership buy-in is important, but the real maker champions are all of you, are all the people working with kids and implementing the programs. And so we wanted to understand more about who those people are. We want to understand what the context in which making is happening in schools, while the pledge includes the ideas of spaces and showcases. We know, making happens in all sorts of ways, in all sorts of contexts, in classes, in libraries, after school, in clubs. And so how is that happening, and what models seem to be working? How can we support? And then to understand, really materially, what can we do to help, and what can we do to help everyone help each other, and a lot of that has to do with resources and support. So we'll go through briefly from a survey that we did last fall, and if you sign the Maker Promise, you'll be receiving this year's version of the survey in the next few weeks. So we'll be sharing some information from that has guided our work for the past year and into this upcoming year, and will then be further informed by additional research.
Yeah, so we want to share with you then the results from this survey of last October, where we had a little bit over 200 Maker Champions respond. And really the goal of sharing this is not just to share data, but to really let you know that this is part of a larger network. And so you'll notice they're highlighted in that chart is that librarian media specialists only made up 23% of the respondents. And we feel like you all are so important to this movement and have been pioneers when it comes to maker education and making in general, that we think this is a perfect time for you all to sign the Maker Promise and then join that larger network, so you bring your expertise and also continue to promote Maker Champions, either if you are the Maker Champion in your school or community, and then also provide support for those that have signed up as well, either regionally or even nationally.
And then we looked at the school context and the students. So one thing we sort of know, but was affirmed here, is that a lot of this is happening in the younger grades, and there's sort of been difficulty kind of making an impression in the high school years. And so it might be interesting when we get to the Q&A later to hear if we have some high school librarians out there. Also, I see there's a question in the chat about school and public libraries. I know this is a library conference writ large, and we can talk about that as well. So we'll hold that question for the end, where much of the focus of the presentation will be on schools.
We're also trying to figure out what are students making. And so in terms of maker learning happening in K-12 settings, we noticed there have been a lot of effort and intentionality around the space itself. And so thinking about how do we redesign spaces, and this is something I think librarians are having to deal with in the 21st century. Since you all are the hub of usually a community or a school, what does it mean then to design your space to support your constituents? And so you'll notice that this is happening as well within making. You'll also notice that extracurricular activities are also what's been happening, where making has been happening. So I feel like the library is another opportunity to bring in those extracurricular activities around making and really support learners of all age, but especially K-12 youth.
And I think just to add to that, one of the things that that we look at a lot, spaces are great, but they're often sort of set aside from the everyday dedicated makerspace, if you have it. Sometimes a dedicated makerspace in a space like a library. But looking at the sustainability of programs, when those programs start to move into the core classes, you start to see more community-wide buy-in, which leads to more program sustainability, which leads to hopefully something that can last a lot longer. And we see librarians as a really big point for helping facilitate that kind of integration, whether it's role as an instructional coach going to classes or bringing classes into the library to work during class time, and there's a really sort of important lever to pull there. Mm-hmm. And then we just did to sort of very directly ask, like, what are you looking for? What do you need help with? And that really long bar is project ideas and guides. Other big needs, professional development, particularly in person, which is always hard. So we wanted to separate in person and online. One is easier to deliver and access. Here we are today, and the other is often harder to find, more expensive, requires time off, and that's part of why leadership buy-in is so important in these programs as well. You have thoughts on the?
No, I think next slide. Yeah.
Great.
And so overall, those needs, I think, related to what K-12 Maker Champions are asking for, really, I think, is wonderful for librarians to step in and support, and not only be a champion themselves, but also then support the other teachers and administrators and even parents and community members of saying, hey, we need project ideas and guides. Librarian is a wealth of information, and how can we then leverage your role and your expertise to then help those K-12 teachers and administrators to really support that makerspace, and for you to be the champion as well. We also noticed that professional development is an opportunity, and so how might then would a librarian assist with educating and supporting and really co-learning with K-12 teachers and administrators. And then of course, resources to integrate, making it cross the curriculum. So often it's just one teacher working in isolation. And so if there's a way that librarians could then leverage their expertise and really think across the curriculum, how does making not just have to be dedicated specifically to science or dedicated happening in art, like making has been happening in art classrooms for years. So how can we leverage that and actually think across disciplines, right? And I think the librarian has a pivoted role to be able to see kind of all of those things happening across the school and or community space. So some of the challenges though that we also wanted to share, although making is fabulous and wonderful, there are challenges related to funding and also curricular resources and projects in terms of how do we assess those. And so I think the librarian, again, can be an avenue, a resource for what might be strategic funding needs and areas that we can pull in money, maybe scholastic bucks, other ways that the librarians might be able to leverage potential funds, and then think about what does assessment look like? How do we know students are learning? And how do we know that this is something that we want to continue to do? So always kind of being reflective and questioning. I think the lens of a librarian really allows us to think about that in different ways.
So we'll talk a little bit about some of what we have started doing and will be doing in the near future to try to provide more support, and then we'll open it up for a little discussion at the end and hopefully find out. Well, we want to find out more how we can support you. So. So the first thing we did is we've expanded the Maker Promise in a few ways. One is from the initial two organizations, Maker Ed and Digital Promise, we've begun bringing in a number of supporting partners. And these supporting partners are other nonprofit organizations, and all of them have some sort of resources or support that they can share with Maker educators. And we'll be continuing to add them and helping to get more and more of those resources out.
And if you feel like your organization is someone that could really contribute to this this network, please let us know. We would love to reach out and have you be a partner to Maker Promise and not just a champion. Don't feel like you have to just stay as a champion. We'd love to have you play multiple roles.
Yep. So a few of the professional development opportunities that through Maker Promise or through either of our orgs.
So we have often been hosting Maker Educator meetups, whether at local conferences, like the ISTE Technological Conference back in last June, or even local regional maker meetups. So we do provide a stipend of either $100 to $150 for you to actually try to host a maker meetup. And really the goal is to bring people together, and it's not about, oh, if you're not a K-12 teacher, you can't come. It really is educators that are like-minded to come together to say, hey, what does making look like? What are we already doing? And have that time, that dedicated time that's so important to actually engage with folks. And so maker meetups are wonderful. And not only do we have a playbook to support you, so if you're like, what is a maker meetup? You can learn more by actually clicking on this link and downloading and looking at the maker meetup. And there's also the opportunity then for a stipend through Maker Promise to then support you in reaching those goals.
And on the Digital Promise side, we have a platform of micro-credentials. So micro-credentials are competency-based recognition for teachers. Rather than thinking about the only way to learn something is to sit in a workshop for 2 hours, that can be a great way to learn. So can reading it in a book, so can just trying it out in your library, in your classes. So we partnered on that platform. We have a lot of partners who have helped create micro-credentials. Maker Ed has created a stack called Getting Started with Making that provides great support if you're just getting started and a sort of path to move through to start to develop this.
Great. Great. And so in the bottom right there of your screen, MakerEd, we have a wonderful online PD module library along with a resource library. So feel free to check out our resources if you're interested in making, trying to figure out how to build capacity and be sustainable. We have some excellent resources as well. And so there's a lot of things coming soon. I'll let Josh talk about that online course and also the framework.
Yeah, so a couple things that will be coming out in the next probably month or so. We're going to have an online course called Deeper Learning Through Making, which will actually also connect to our micro-credentials, the MakerEd ones, and some that relate to deeper learning and some of the work that we've done into that. And so it'll be on the Edmodo Spotlight platform, which is Edmodo's online course platform, and it'll also try to walk you through that sort of getting started experience of thinking how to think through design thinking and making and innovating with students. And then more aimed at the school administration piece of the Maker Promise, but that will have some content that's I think really useful for this audience is something that we're calling the Maker Learning Leadership Framework, which is going to be a series of tools to help administrators build sustainable programs. And that will be released probably right after Thanksgiving. The links in this document are clickable. I see that question. If they're not clickable in this interface, we will make sure to share this slide deck out on Twitter using the library hashtag. And if you don't see that or you're not on Twitter, our emails are on that intro slide and we can throw it back up at the end. Feel free to email either one of us and we can send this slide deck with all the links. Also, you can get all of this information by going to makerpromise.org, signing the Maker Promise, and getting on our mailing list. So we share this out and it's all linked from that website as well.
Great. So 2 upcoming opportunities. If you happen to be in the Philadelphia area, come early November. November 4th, we have partnered with EdCamp, a wonderful unconference provider, to bring together a maker-focused activity, not only in Philadelphia, but for a full day at Friends Central Lower School in Wynwood, Pennsylvania. So if you are in that area, it is free. You will get to meet both of us. And of course, you'll be able to see the amazing makerspace Friends Central School, the lower school has, called the Light Lab, and engage in an unconference type atmosphere. So a wonderful opportunity. We also will be at the upcoming AASL conference in Phoenix. And that will be just 5 days after, Thursday, November 4th. I'm sorry, November 9th. And that's a maker meetup. And so we'd love to have you there at the Create Science Center. There's a makerspace called the Create in the Arizona Science Center, and that will be in Phoenix. So those are 2 upcoming events in this winter, and we'd love if you could attend and also promote as well.
Yeah, so we'd love to see you. We have one for the East Coast folks and one for the West Coast folks. And so we are not TXLA, I think that's Texas Library Association. We tend to go to a handful of the kind of national conferences. What we really do is encourage you to host a meetup at your regional conferences. And that, what was on the last slide, host a meetup playbook. We can help you organize that and support that and promote that. And so we can't be everywhere, and we need the Maker Champions to help spread the word. So glad you asked that question.
So just to reiterate some resources for MakerEd, our resource library. If those links don't work, we will promise to make sure that they will. And we said add links to guides. We will do that. We apologize. This was our later version. This wasn't our final version of our presentation, obviously. From Digital Promise. That's my fault. We have a number of things.
We have a few, yeah. So from we'll add more links from MakerEd before we send that final slide deck out on Twitter. On the Maker Promise side, we have a number of guides. The Filmmaker Guide is a sort of long. It could be used as a course or an ongoing project that focuses both on redesigning a product and telling a story about it using video. The Learning Studio is a network of schools that have been working in 3D design and digital fabrication, and we have the teacher's guide that they've created from that program is public. If you have access to a VR headset and a 360 camera, which are very cool tools and becoming much more affordable and accessible, we have a toolkit for helping kids tell their stories with 360 video. And I think one of the things that we like to talk about, I come from an arts background and Jessica comes from a humanities background. And we always like to say that making media is making. And I think that really resonates with librarians too. It's not just about the stuff, about the stories and making things in all sorts of media. And challenge-based learning is a framework that we use at Digital Promise a lot that can provide a really great framework for framing a maker project. Also, as I mentioned, a lot of our new supporting partners share project libraries as well. So a few of the ones whose the resources focus on projects are Digital Harbor Foundation. They have a great library called Blueprint, and it's normally behind a paywall, but if you sign up for the Maker Promise, you get access to the entire thing for free. There's a link through the Maker Promise site once you sign up. Curiosity Machine has some great engineering projects. The Tinkering Studio, based out of the Exploratorium here in San Francisco, has great tinkering projects. And there's a lot more, and we'll be adding them through the Maker Promise newsletter and website. And I'll say it again: sign the Maker Promise and keep getting this information coming.
So why don't we go back to the first screen real quick? I'm sure there's an easier way, but I'll just go back through this. So that way you can see our emails and also our roles. So I know folks had questions. So we'll start looking through the chat. So if you have those questions, we will be happy to answer them. One comes from Stephen, who says, is it best to market the community to community stuff, vinyl printers, Arduinos, Raspberry Pis, or marketing people using these gadgets in person on flyers of online images? I'm not sure I totally understand the question.
So I think the question is in terms of like getting people in and promoting a program or a space. I'm always going to say focus on the people and not the stuff, because the makers are what's most important. The tools are secondary. There are any number of tools that you can make things with. I mean, of course, to be totally honest, there are people who are very attracted to shiny objects, and it will get some people in the door. But when it comes to really highlighting what's most important, it's always going to be the people.
Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean that you can't have a focus on learning specific skills around laser cutting or the vinyl cutter or even cardboard, but to actually have something where folks can come and make together is really inspiring. And so I feel like whatever you have in your space, whether that might be a closet, whether that might be a corner of a room or a mobile makerspace, if there's a way for folks to come and make together, I think that's a wonderful activity, whether it's cardboard, glue guns, or even laser cutting. So I would not think that, don't allow yourself to think that you need to have a flashy tool, just allow yourself to think that, give them an opportunity to make. We've seen wonderful things happen with cardboard and glue. And if you're curious, look at the cardboard challenge through Kane's Arcade that came out of that project with the young boy, which we can add to the slides when we send them back. Yeah, thank you for that question.
Early on, there was a question about public libraries and school
Yes.
libraries. I don't know if you want to share some thoughts on.
I forget what the question is. Let me scroll and see if I can find it. Here it is. Do makerspaces differ in school versus public libraries? If so, the answer would be yes. But I think that's because any sort of makerspace in our mind, especially from Maker Ed's perspective, is that any space can be a makerspace, and not all. In fact, not all makerspaces should look the same. It should really be about what's your goal with the space, who is going to be in your space, and how can you meet their needs. And so really it is about customizing your space to meet the needs of whether it's your K-12 youth, whether it's the larger elderly community in your population, or your church group. Really depends on who are the people that are coming and the relationships you want to establish.
Cool. So I see a question about how do we get people in. I think this might be the second question in that area. And there's no one strategy. I think there's a lot of things that a lot of people tried, and I'd also love to hear if people in the group have experience with that and want to help out friends. That would be great to do in the chat as well. So my perspective on that is,
what that is, because I'm confused on what you're answering. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. My perspective on bringing people into the space.
Gotcha.
The approach that when I was in a school and that I've seen be very successful is this idea of a monthly challenge or periodic kind of fixed events is great. I think it's really important to reach out to kids and see what are they already doing, what do they feel comfortable with. I think we want to push people in the makerspace. We want to push them to learn something new and try something new and do something different. But when it comes to getting them in the door, sometimes it can be really helpful to start with kind of where they are. And that basically, the first step is reaching out and trying to talk to them and say, you know, what is it you want to do? How are you making already? What do you see that's not, you know, that's not represented here that you do at home that you want to do here? And try and frame a project around that to start. And once you have them in the door, you know, once you have the hook, you can start pushing in new directions and exposing them to new things.
Yeah, great. And I love Josh's point that really it shouldn't be just a one-prong effort, right? This should be a multi-prong effort where it might be meetups, it might be invitations for folks to come in and speak, have panel discussions, and also is getting out into the world and your community, like Josh just stated, of talking to students or even talking with parents, talking with other educators in the area. What is driving them? What needs do they have? And then how might the space support them?
I saw a note about food and food making programs. That's another one that I think is great. You know, media is making, cooking is making, right? You know, making it's not just the robots and the 3D printers, and that stuff is cool and that stuff is great. But it can be, you know, the reality is for some kids it can be threatening, right? You come in, I don't belong here, and you really want to find ways to bring people in. So I think all of the above approach helps get people in the door.
Yeah, and in the maker meetups that we host, we always provide food for free because anyone will, you'd be amazed how many people will just want a free meal, but then will stay because of the community, right? Come for the free food, but then end up staying for the conversation.
It works for grown-ups and for kids.
Yeah, definitely. Other questions we have, let's see. Oh, I love the idea from Lauren Robinson, who says a survey and poll might be one way to reach out. Yeah, we love that idea in terms of, and even just having small conversations with folks. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. And Courtney's point of something not difficult but not easy as accessibility, right? You don't want, you know, the people like to be challenged. Seymour Papert, who's an academic who is sort of a foundational figure in the maker movement, particularly in education, talks about hard fun, and I think that's a good slogan to keep in your head as you're planning, you know, maker learning activities. Is trying to maintain that level of hard fun.
Yeah, definitely.
So we've got another minute or two if anybody has questions.
And if we haven't captured your question, feel free to repost. We have like the scroll of death here with all these questions. So we want to make sure we get your response.
Yeah, paper circuits and sewable circuits are great. E-textiles can be a lot of fun.
Let's see, Rachel says that she did a lesson about oil spills and asked the kids how they would clean up the oil.
Yeah. So just to, there's a bunch of questions popping up. But yeah, making it about current events, and even more importantly, make it about things that are going on around them, things that they can really relate to. Sometimes we plan big challenges. You'll see it in the Learning Studios teacher guide that we linked before, where we look at global goals. If you haven't seen the UN Sustainable Development Goals, there are 17 global goals for like how do we create a more sustainable world. It's basically every problem you could possibly solve in 17 bullet points. But when we build a challenge around that, that's so big. And it's also, you know, for kids to sort of solve a problem, it's actually, you know, much better for them to look locally. So you can use these sort of global problems and then say, how do they manifest near you in a way that's important to you? And how can we build a project around that? How can we solve a problem that we see right here? Which actually is a great segue to, we'll close with a video we'll close with it because it might, you know, with the bandwidth, who knows if it'll play right. So that shows actually a school doing a project in a library around the Sustainable Development Goals. So it'll be a nice way to segue on that point. Before that, I'll just say wearable circuits. So e-textiles is a combination. It uses metallic thread as a wire, and then like batteries and LEDs and switches you can sew in with this conductive thread to create circuits in fabric. And there are even versions of microcontrollers, Arduinos that can be sewn in to do cool, like basically like soft robotics. So that's a thing to check out if you just Google e-textiles or LilyPad Arduino, all sorts of things. You'll just go down a rabbit hole. So I think we're about out of time. So we will say thank you very much for for coming and hearing from us.
Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you.
And we'll close out with the video. And as soon as we put those last couple links on the slide, we will tweet that out. And if anybody can't access that, just shoot us an email and we'll make sure we send it along to you. So thanks so much for coming, and we'll leave you with this.
We're in a middle school. I have 6th, 7th, and 8th graders that are in the library club. We started out with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We thought about, okay, in our own local community, what are our needs?
People are struggling with poverty, hunger, and illiteracy, and we're trying to fix that.
Sponsors for books and tutoring program. That's really interesting.
We narrowed it down to 2, education and no more hunger, and we just decided to do both. We separated into small groups to just brainstorm, come up with how we can help.
So many people had different ideas on how to do this, and so to be able to get everyone's ideas included into the project was a real challenge.
So what we're making is a little free library/food pantry, which we are going to call the Read and Feed.
There were kids who were interested in a lot of different aspects of the same project. I had a lot of students who wanted to build things and be hands-on. I had some that wanted to make flyers and videos, and I had some who just wanted to do more of the social organization behind a food drive or a book drive.
We made a blueprint and we printed it.
This is the 3D printed model of our Read and Feed. It has 2 sides. We have the book side, which is bookshelves, and you have the oven side, which just opens and you put food in there.
I learned a lot about teamwork in this and how to function as a group, and I think I've grown from that.
My peers and I helped each other by giving each other advice and also giving each other pep talks to actually do something. This project has been a good way for me to learn leadership skills and to be able to figure out that I can make a difference.
This project absolutely helped me understand the way I learn, because I am definitely a hands-on learner, so that kind of hands-on learning but with other people will definitely help me in some of my other classes with projects.
Libraries are in the middle of a big shift. We used to be the keepers of knowledge. It's becoming a shift to equity of access to things like computers and 3D printers and circuit kits and anything that they can use to take what they know and what they can find online or in videos and use that to make something new. It empowers them to be creators instead of just consumers of knowledge. We get to help students become creators and innovators and